Hello and welcome to R&R's Ask the Expert. I'm Kayla McGowan, Editor-in-Chief, and today we're diving into water damage prevention and restoration. My guest today is John Otero. He has 35 years of experience in cleaning and restoration, driving operational excellence, education, and innovation. He is the franchise business coach for 1-800 Water Damage. He supports franchise owners and teams nationwide with scalable, field-tested solutions. John holds a number of IICRC certifications and has delivered over 350 seminars to more than 8,000 professionals across the US and Canada. He shares his expertise at major events and on social media, mentoring franchisees and solving complex technical challenges. Please welcome John.
Hey, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, you're so welcome. Thank you for joining me today. I know we have a lot to cover. We got to chat a little bit, so I'm really excited to kind of dive in. So first and foremost, I think spring is here. We've already seen a ton of rain and storm activity. So what are some of the biggest water damage risks that homeowners face during spring storms and showers, and how can they prepare?
It's a great question. So we'll look at there's so many, but let's look at three areas, right? Flooded basements. So what happens with melting snow or heavy rains? It can saturate the soil, and that could push water into the cracks of through the foundation walls. So a couple of things to look at is you should have a sump pump or install one, right, with a battery backup. And then check out your foundation cracks. We might have to do some sealing on there. Another thing the homeowners can look at is roofs that leak, right? Over time, especially if you have a bad storm or wind gusts or anything like that, or just age, there could be some damage or missing shingles from the storms, and that can have leakage or rain coming in, right? So what we'd recommend doing is always inspect the roof for some damage, especially if they're around vents, chimneys, skylights, and I think we kind of forget about that. And then we want to patch or replace any weak spots that are on there. And then also, sometimes we don't think about this, but poor grading around the house, the landscaping, right, may shift over time, especially if it's an older home. My parents had a home that was built in 1914, right? So things have changed over that. So there might be some areas where when it rains heavily, the water might pool in some areas near the foundation. So we want to check that out. Ensure the ground actually slopes away from the home itself. So a couple, like a checklist per se. Want to clean and inspect gutters, downspouts, test the sump pump. We talked about that. Inspect the roof and the attic. Seal cracks in the foundation, windows, doors. Check the yard grading. And here's one thing that I don't think a lot of homeowners do. Review your homeowner's insurance, right? So especially is water damage covered. In addition, because of the values of the homes have been increasing, if you haven't also increased the policy coverage, that can hurt you, especially, for example, the fires in California, right? So their coverage, they never really increased it. Even now, the value has really increased. So recommend the homeowners to check their insurance coverage on that.
I would definitely say prevention is so key, right? These are all preventative measures that if you take action now, or even us as professionals, if you make sure that your customers are implementing this prior to the weather coming, right? It's not just spring, we've got hurricane season coming, we've got fire season coming, which I don't know if we really have seasons anymore at this point, but
Right.
it all goes back to prevention. It's something that could really be inexpensive for
Mhm.
them to do.
Mhm.
And if you did have a higher cost thing that needs to be fixed, it gives you time to figure out maybe some fail safes for a short period of time to avoid any damage. And I think you mentioned some really great points, like the roof, right? It's there, it's a huge part of our building envelope. And if there's any type of compromise, if water gets in, water must come down, right? Gravity. So not only is it just a roof or maybe an attic issue, it can be down into your walls and sometimes even your basement. It can make it down to your basement.
Absolutely.
So I think that's huge. Those like that checklist is great because no matter where you are in the world, right? Not just in the United States, it can make a world of difference. Like I'm in Nevada, you're in Phoenix. We have monsoon season, okay? And we flood. We actually do flood. And I think that a majority of businesses and homeowners here probably don't really think about that type of stuff. So it's
Yeah.
really important to make sure you have those checklists.
Yeah, we
Um,
have, in Phoenix, I don't know if you want to Google it, it's called a hoob. And these are big, huge, large dust storms that come in Phoenix. But the winds can be anywhere from 60 to 75 miles an hour, right? And so after that, you could have some roof damage to check out. So yeah, it doesn't matter where you live. There's always some kind of preventative situation you want to look at.
Yeah, and I think the part you talked about homeowners insurance, that's really huge too, especially in the way that things are going now these days as well. And even those people in Asheville, I'm sure they were not prepared for that, or even some people along the Florida coast or the Carolinas, they potentially could have a house that's worth double what it was prior and they don't have the coverage for it. So I think it's really important to understand there's a lot of variables in prevention and preparation
Yeah.
for these types of things. So you did kind of talk about some preventative measures for preparing, but how can you minimize flooding and water intrusion aside from making sure that there's the house is, the ground sloping away and things like that. I know sometimes there's cracks in the foundation. Maybe people don't check their weather stripping around their doors or their windows. Can you kind of dive in a little bit on
Yeah,
that?
what's interesting is there's also now we're going into even more technology, right? So there's actually smart home monitoring or tech detection. For example, there are leak detections that you can use near appliances, water heaters, refrigerators, that if there is a leak, it'll sound alarm. It has Bluetooth technology to let you know what's going on, noise detection on that. And here's what's really crazy is some of that is as low as $35. So you can get a leak detection alarm for $35, which could prevent a lot of damage in if you didn't know about it, correct?
Yeah.
Um, some other things that you might want to check is having possibly a restoration company come and do a property risk assessment where we can come in and take a look at the home and see if there's, with a thermal imaging camera, moisture meter, so on and so forth. And then if you're looking on more on the, let's say the commercial side, so we've been talking more residential, but if we talk about the commercial side, the restoration companies can actually do a emergency response plan for the commercial accounts, right? So what happens then is we can take a look, talk with the management team, the engineering team, find out where the utility shutoff valves are, emergency contacts, what actions would we do, especially in a 24/7 situation, right? Because it's most of the time in our industry, the pipes don't pop during the day. It's always on a Friday night or Saturday night when we have plans, birthdays, holidays, anniversaries, and boom, pop breaks and the water pipe breaks, and now we've got a job, right? But if we have an emergency response plan in advance with commercial accounts, it makes the situation a lot easier. And then going back, owners in areas where there could be hurricanes or tropical storms, you might have sandbags or water activated barriers in place. Always have flashlights and battery, a to-go bag, right? Portable sump pump, emergency contact list, right? So what if you are in Florida? Do you let your relatives know, you know what, in case we're not here and you can't contact us, we're going to go maybe to Georgia or family relatives. So you should really let your relatives know if you're going somewhere, right? So they're not worrying about you. Plastic sheeting, duct tape, so on and so forth. So some of those are some of the things that homeowners, again, and as well as commercial accounts, can look at preventative issues.
Yeah, and I think it's huge. You mentioned like the emergency response, and preparation and all of that. Like that's huge. Again, this goes back to proactive
Mhm.
measures, right? And I think you bring a good point about letting people know around you where you are, what you're doing, because let's say something does happen, you take that worry out. Also, if somebody has to come secure something for you, they're able to do it, right? I think a lot of times we do see in this line of work that someone's house caught on fire and they weren't home.
Mhm.
Somebody's house flooded and they weren't home. And so, in those instances, who would you call, right? I think that's the type of stuff that's really important. And also, like you said, call on your restoration professionals, build that relationship, so that you're able to understand the logistics and who to trust, right? I think we know when there's any type of damage to a home, there's people that flock to be saviors and they're not always saviors. And so it's really important to prepare as much as you can. So in the time of crisis or need, that's that peace of mind you have. Like, okay, I did prepare something, so at least I don't have to worry about that part,
That's
right?
right. That's
Of
right.
all
Yeah.
of the long things that have to come.
Yeah.
So, speaking of all of this, we talked about preparation. Once flooding does occur, what are some of the first steps that are super critical in restoration and preventing any long-term damage?
That's a good question. So the first 24 to 48 hours are crucial, right? Because that could prevent long-term damage, mold, structural damage, health issues, right? Health hazards. From a homeowner's point of view or a commercial point of view, safety's first, right? Make sure to turn off the electricity, the gas. You don't want to enter any standing water where there's live electrical systems. PPE, you should have boots and gloves. And for example, last year with the hurricanes and the flooding that goes on, a homeowner, you were watching the news and the homeowners are walking, in the water. They really shouldn't be walking in that water because now that that water is flooded in, right? It's coming in from the outside in. That water is contaminated. It can have gas, it can have pesticides, it can have all kinds of different kinds of chemicals in there. So it's contaminated. So you should be wearing boots, you should be wearing gloves, you shouldn't be playing in it, right? And having flip-flops. And you really should be evacuating that area because there could also be some structural damage. So you got to be very careful. Another thing for commercial and residential, take photos now. Go into the home, go into the room, and take photos, take videos before anything happens, right? Um, then when if their situation is where the home is damaged or the commercial, then we have photos prior. There's an app called Timestamp. Sorry about that.
No, you're good.
Timestamp app that actually has a date and the address of where you're taking pictures from. So the homeowner should be taking those and documenting, having a list of what you have. Now, after the situation, let's say unfortunately there's a flood that comes in, the homeowner might want to take some pictures of where the water line was. How high did the water get? Any damaged furniture, flooring, walls, appliances, HVAC systems. And then one thing too is if you did purchase something, you want to save the receipts for emergency, any expenses that you have because they might be reimbursed by the insurance company. Um, so in addition, regarding from the restoration point of view, the restoration companies are going to want to make sure we document the moisture readings, right? Get the ambient air temperature readings, having a dry log, have that documented. Um, and especially if we're not getting into there, maybe 48 hours, 72 hours, there might be some mold. So we got to document that. We might do an air quality test. there's so many different things from the restoration point of view, but in any IRCRC class, when it comes to water damage, document. I mean, we stress that a lot. So documentation is really important as well.
Yeah, and I would say the assessment, right? That's like one of the most things is responding is your first crucial step, assessment, and then documentation, everything like that. And as far as the homeowner perspective as well, you know, on the homeowner side, if you never documented what you had, it makes the job for the restoration contractor that much harder, right? Especially if we're handling the insurance portion and things like that. So that all of these preventative things cause some backup at the end if it's not done prior. And really, you should anyway, just in general, whether it's outside of cap season or broken pipe or
Absolutely.
anything like that, you should always, because insurance plays a role in every situation in your home. And so I think that's just another way to help our customers familiarize themselves with the type of coverage that they do have and what they should be doing as proactive measures.
And it doesn't have to be just water; it could be fire, right? I
Yeah.
was in Prescott last week, and homeowner plugged in something that created a fire. So no one plans this. I think that's the one thing in our industry. Uh, no one plans a water damage or a fire, or, smoke damage or anything like that. So the homeowner can become very stressed. They don't understand the system.
Mhm.
But having this documentation of what's in the home, the garage, so on and so forth, like you said, will make it easier in the future.
Yeah, and like you said, none of this is planned, right? So if
Uh,
you think it's not going to happen to you, chances are it probably won't, but it can happen. And I think that's the other thing is, a couple years ago, at two houses down from our house, they caught on fire. The garage caught on fire, and I immediately turned off the air conditioning, even though it was hot.
yeah,
And if I were not in this industry, I would have not known any better, if I'm being
right.
quite honest. And
Hmm.
so even if you're not directly affected, there's still risk that happens anytime there's any type of fire. Even like water, you may see somebody's house got, nailed by the storm that you had, and you're like, oh, it's not a problem for me. Like maybe you should have it checked, right?
Yeah,
You never know until it becomes a problem, and then that's another issue at hand. But, I think you mentioned technology a little earlier,
yeah.
right? Like the detection thing, $35 could save you thousands, I think is huge for people listening. But how is new technology improving water damage restoration, and what innovations should our industry be aware of?
Yeah, this is ongoing. So being in the industry 35 years, technology is constantly changing. And I tell our franchise owners with 1-800 water damage, you're never going to graduate in this industry. Just never. Every job's different, every customer's different, technology's different. The one thing that we've seen over in time that has made it even better is thermal imaging cameras. Those used to be 10, 15, $20,000. Now they're, 500,000, 1,500. So that's one thing that I would always recommend is having a thermal imaging camera. It doesn't tell you if the wall is wet. It tells you a surface temperature differential, right? So if the wall is wet, it will be cooler, right? So it'll maybe go light purple or something like that. But I think having moisture meters, that's what we have to use. But I think it's a requirement to also have a thermal imaging camera. And also we actually let the homeowner hold it. Take a look at it for yourself, right? Because there's a difference of seeing a screen with thermal imaging and then hearing a meter beep, right? You hear a sound, yeah. But having a thermal imaging camera really, I think, creates a deeper trust in us as contractors when we're showing them. And some homeowners also think, well, it came from the floor. And as we are using our thermal imaging camera, we're going up the wall and we're like, actually, it's up there. And it would have taken a lot longer to figure that out, but having a thermal imaging camera works out good. Remote monitoring is also, we're starting to see a lot more manufacturers using remote monitoring. There is also a metering meter company that has Bluetooth technology that can actually connect to your app. So as you're doing your ambient temperature readings, temperature of the air, relative humidity, dew point, so on and so forth, that actually has Bluetooth technology that can go to your app that you can also upload to the cloud. So now you're getting all these readings a lot faster. And then, so remote monitoring would be number two for me. Number three would be 3D imaging, right? So Matterport, DocuSketch, having that to me is very powerful because some of our homeowners are not home. For example, I'll give you an example. One of our owners is in Colorado Springs near Air Force Base. So those homeowners are living all over the world. And so having a 3D scan, sending it to them to let them see what's going on, because they can look up, they can look down, they can look side to side. So the Matterport software allows that. And I think that also helps build a trust level from the homeowner to the restoration company. So, and the adjuster likes having a lot of adjusters now are based just in their office, and having that 3D scan helps out a lot. And mobile apps, we're starting to see a lot more mobile apps out there, which is also helps with the documentation. So, for example, like PSA is a great CRM system that allows you to take project notes, moisture readings, and photos, um, and it keeps track of your customers. So, having a CRM system integrated and where you're using it constantly is very important to have that mobile app and all that documentation right in the palm of your hands.
Yeah, and I would definitely say as far as technology, we know it's not going to go anywhere. So we might as well utilize it to its maximum capacity and help it make us more efficient and more effective. I
Mhm.
also think you touched on some key points about the customer experience, right? If we look at our customers, most of them do utilize technology in some way, shape, or form. And to be able to hold it, touch it, feel it, understand the story will make a world of difference because we have to remember, though this is not foreign to us, most of the people we're seeing, whether they're business owners or homeowners, this is their first time.
Yeah.
So, like you said, with like a thermal imaging camera, if you're able to show them, hey, look at this is what the rest of your wall looks like, it's all pretty much the same temperature. And then look, we go up and now you've got blue and pink. What does that mean? What does blue, pink, purple mean
Right.
opposed to, orange, yellow, red? What does that mean? And you're able to paint that picture. Remote monitoring, mileage is cut down, time between jobs is cut down. You're able to actually utilize your crews to stay on job sites that need to be, managed a little bit closer and in person at that time, right? And to your last point, like the 360 documentation as far as like imaging is huge because, like you said, people are not home. Adjusters are at their desk, flipping through images. They're trying to piece together what room is this, even if you label your stuff. To
Yeah.
be able to drag and see things, it makes a world of difference. I recently got to see a docu-sketch in VR, and it was like I was in there. And I'm like,
Right.
this is next level. You know what I mean? Like, this is huge, not only for the adjuster or us as the restorers, but for your customer.
Right.
They can actually probably tell you, hey, something's missing, or hey, they can ask questions based on what they're looking at, and it will make sense to all parties involved, which is really huge.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like that.
So, I know we've covered a lot of ground here, and I could probably go on and on about this. I think you could too, but let's talk about looking ahead. How can us as the restoration contractor and communities work together to mitigate seasonal fitting risks? And though it's not always seasonal, but how can we help prepare and work together in times of preparation for flooding?
Yeah, in that case, what you might want to do is working with your Chamber of Commerce can work out really good in providing a educational program that talks about flood risk and prevention tips. Because that chamber is a close-knit community. A lot of the times they're associated with the mayor, governor, and so forth. Having town hall meetings when there's, especially in areas where it's prone to have tropical storms or hurricanes, work with the town halls and Chamber of Commerce. I think can do that, and also communicate with your customer base, your homeowners. You can either do that also through social media, right? And how to have preventative tips on that. So hope that helps you out a little bit.
Yeah, and I think it's accessible, right? If you're hitting them in the community light with chamber or the town halls and then social media and email. I think that's the other thing is, like you said, utilizing your CRM, right?
Hmm.
Let's utilize the CRM and say, hey, storm season's around the corner or, spring means showers. How do you prepare for that? And I think that's really huge. And we all know technology is at the center of most people's universe. So email and social media are probably two things you want to utilize to help. I think we oftentimes need to remember we are human too, and we need to help prepare our staff as well.
That's it.
Well, thank you so much for your time today, John. I really appreciate it. I'm sure we'll see you again sometime
Absolutely.
soon.
Thank
Um,
you. It was a pleasure. Thanks for inviting me. Thank you so much.
you are so welcome. And then for everybody listening, as always, we will see you on the next Ask the Expert. Take care.